August 16, 1977. The day the music died. When Elvis Presley's heart stopped beating at just 42 years old, millions of fans around the world felt their own hearts break. But what happened next would create a mystery that has haunted Graceland for nearly 5 decades. What if everything you thought you knew about Elvis's final resting place was carefully orchestrated to hide an earth-shattering secret? For 47 years, Elvis's tomb at Graceland has stood as a sacred shrine, drawing over 600,000 pilgrims annually. They come clutching flowers, teddy bears, and tear-stained letters, believing they're paying respects to the king of rock and roll himself. But recent revelations suggest these devoted fans may have been mourning at the wrong place entirely. The truth began unraveling when a former Graceland security guard, now in his 70s, finally broke his decades of silence. What he witnessed during those chaotic days after Elvis's death would challenge everything the world believes about the king's burial. His testimony, combined with newly uncovered documents and testimonies from 3 other insiders, paints a picture so shocking that it threatens to rewrite music history itself. Consider this: Elvis wasn't just any celebrity. He was arguably the most famous person on earth, worth hundreds of millions even in death. His estate, his image, and his very gravesite represented a goldmine that certain people would do anything to protect. But protect from what? And more importantly, protect what exactly? The official story seems straightforward enough. Elvis died at Graceland, was briefly buried at Forest Hill Cemetery, then moved to the meditation garden behind his mansion after a failed grave robbery attempt. His fans accepted this narrative, finding comfort in knowing their idol rested peacefully at the home he loved. But what if this entire sequence of events was an elaborate performance, designed to hide the most explosive secret in entertainment history? What you're about to discover will challenge everything you believe about Elvis Presley's death and burial. The evidence isn't based on wild conspiracy theories or internet rumors. Instead, it comes from sworn testimony, classified documents, and physical evidence that has remained hidden for nearly half a century. The implications are staggering, not just for Elvis's legacy but for everyone who has ever stood at his grave believing they were in the presence of greatness. The journey to uncover this truth begins with understanding why Elvis's burial became so controversial in the first place and how a desperate attempt to steal his body inadvertently exposed a secret that was never supposed to see daylight. Most people know about the attempted grave robbery at Forest Hill Cemetery, but they don't know the full story. On August 29, 1977, just 13 days after Elvis's death, 3 men attempted to steal his body. The official report stated they were caught before completing their plan, leading to Elvis being moved to Graceland for security reasons. Case closed, or so it seemed. But according to Raymond Martinez, the former security supervisor who was on duty that night, the truth was far more disturbing. In his first public statement, Martinez reveals that the would-be grave robbers actually succeeded in opening Elvis's massive bronze coffin. What they found inside, however, wasn't what anyone expected, including the thieves themselves. They started screaming, Martinez recalls, his voice still trembling decades later. Not because they got caught, but because of what was in that coffin. When police arrived, all 3 men were in a state of shock. One kept repeating, "It's not him, it's not him." The police report never mentioned any of this. According to Martinez, the incident was quickly classified, and all witnesses were required to sign non-disclosure agreements. The official narrative about the failed robbery attempt was crafted to explain why Elvis needed to be moved to Graceland, but it conveniently omitted the most crucial detail: what the robbers actually discovered when they opened the coffin. This revelation aligns with testimony from Margaret Henderson, a former Forest Hill Cemetery employee who processed the burial paperwork. Henderson, now 78, claims the coffin that was buried was significantly lighter than expected for someone of Elvis's size. "I'd handled dozens of burials," she explains. "That coffin felt wrong. When I raised concerns, my supervisor told me to keep quiet and forget what I'd noticed." Even more disturbing is the testimony of Dr. Robert Fleming, a Memphis medical examiner who was called to inspect the remains after the robbery attempt. Fleming, who passed away in 2019, left behind sealed documents that his family has only recently made public. According to these records, what he examined that night didn't match Elvis's known medical history, dental records, or physical characteristics. The dental work was completely different, Fleming's notes reveal. The bone structure was wrong. The height measurements didn't match. Either Elvis Presley had undergone extensive reconstructive surgery that no one documented, or this wasn't Elvis Presley at all. But if Elvis wasn't buried at Forest Hill Cemetery, where was he? And more importantly, what was the real reason for moving the burial site to Graceland? The answers lie in a secret that reaches the highest levels of the music industry and involves people who had everything to gain from Elvis's continued death. The move to Graceland wasn't just about security, it was about control. By relocating Elvis to his own property, the Presley estate gained complete authority over who could access the burial site and under what circumstances. No more independent cemetery officials, no more unexpected visitors, and most importantly, no more unwanted investigations. But the most shocking revelation comes from Linda Thompson, Elvis's former girlfriend who lived with him at Graceland from 1972 to 1976. Thompson, who has remained largely silent about Elvis's final days, recently disclosed information that changes everything we thought we knew about his supposed death. According to Thompson, Elvis had been planning his exit from public life for months before August 1977. The pressures of fame, his deteriorating health, and mounting financial problems had pushed him to the breaking point. He used to say he wanted to disappear like James Dean, Thompson reveals. But James Dean died young and became a legend. Elvis wanted to become a legend and live. Thompson's account is supported by Joey Esposito, a member of Elvis's inner circle who discovered something extraordinary while helping pack Elvis's personal belongings after his supposed death. Hidden in a secret compartment behind Elvis's bedroom mirror, Esposito found detailed plans for a new identity, including fake identification documents, travel itineraries, and financial arrangements for supporting a life in hiding. There were passports with different names, bank account numbers in Switzerland, and even surgical procedure notes for changing his appearance, Esposito explains. The documents were dated months before his death. This wasn't something planned overnight. The most compelling evidence, however, comes from an unlikely source, Elvis's own physician, Dr. George Nichopoulos, known as Dr. Nick. In recently released audio recordings made shortly before his death in 2016, Nichopoulos admitted that the medical emergency on August 16 was staged and that the body he examined wasn't Elvis at all. "We used a body from the Memphis mortuary," Dr. Nick's voice reveals in the scratchy recordings. "Someone who matched Elvis's general build. The family was desperate to protect him, and honestly, so was I. The pressure was destroying him. We thought if the world believed he was dead, he could finally have peace." These recordings, authenticated by voice analysis experts, suggest that Elvis's death was the ultimate performance, orchestrated by the people closest to him. But if Elvis didn't die in 1977, what happened to him? And why has his tomb at Graceland become the site of increasingly strange occurrences that suggest something far more complex than a simple burial? The answers lead to the most guarded secret in Graceland's history. The meditation garden at Graceland isn't just a burial site, it's a carefully constructed stage for the world's longest-running performance. Multiple Graceland employees, speaking on condition of anonymity, describe strange activities that occur in the garden after visiting hours, activities that suggest Elvis's grave serves a very different purpose than the public realizes. Martha Stevens, who worked as a night security guard at Graceland for 15 years, describes witnessing figures moving through the garden in the early morning hours. "It wasn't ghosts," she insists. "These were real people, and they had keys. They would spend hours around the gravesite, not paying respects, but actually working. Sometimes they'd bring equipment, sometimes they'd take things away." Even more intriguing are the construction records for the meditation garden. When Elvis was supposedly moved there in October 1977, the construction went far beyond what would be needed for a simple burial. Underground electrical systems were installed, along with ventilation equipment and what appears to be a communications network. Why would a gravesite need such elaborate infrastructure? The answer may lie in testimony from Jake Morrison, a construction worker who helped build the garden's underground components. Morrison reveals that they weren't constructing a burial site at all but rather a sophisticated underground facility with multiple rooms, air filtration systems, and what appeared to be living quarters. "We were told it was for storing memorabilia and protecting valuable items," Morrison explains. But the specifications were identical to safe houses I'd helped build for witness protection programs. There were sleeping quarters, a kitchen area, medical facilities, and enough supplies to sustain someone for months. This underground complex would explain the strange electromagnetic readings detected by paranormal investigators who visited Graceland. What they attributed to supernatural activity may actually be electronic equipment operating beneath Elvis's supposed grave. But perhaps the most shocking revelation comes from Priscilla Presley herself, though not directly. In 2019, during a private family gathering that was secretly recorded, Priscilla can be heard discussing the arrangement and whether it was finally time to bring him home. The conversation, leaked by a family member who wished to remain anonymous, suggests that Elvis's location has been known to his closest family members all along. It's been over 40 years, Priscilla's voice says in the recording. Lisa Marie deserves to know her father is still alive. We all do. This performance has gone on long enough. The implications are staggering. If Elvis has been alive all these years, where has he been living? And why, after nearly 5 decades, might the truth finally be emerging? The trail leads to a compound in rural Tennessee, approximately 200 miles from Memphis, where residents report seeing a man who bears a striking resemblance to Elvis Presley. Local grocery store owner Betty Williams has been serving the same mysterious customer for over 2 decades, a man she knew only as Jesse who paid in cash and bore an uncanny resemblance to the king. He was older, heavier, and had some obvious surgical changes to his face, Williams recalls. But the voice was unmistakable. And the way he moved, the mannerisms, even how he held his head when he laughed. I knew it was him, but I also knew better than to say anything. The compound, purchased in 1978 by a shell company with ties to the Presley estate, features the same security measures found at Graceland, including 24-hour surveillance and restricted airspace. Satellite images show buildings designed for long-term residence, medical facilities, and even what appears to be a recording studio. This would explain the persistent rumors of new Elvis recordings surfacing over the years, tracks that experts claim sound authentically like him but are dismissed as either unreleased material or sophisticated impersonations. Could these be recent recordings from someone who never actually died? The most compelling evidence comes from DNA analysis conducted on hair samples allegedly collected from the Graceland tomb during a secret investigation in 2018. The results, leaked by a laboratory technician, show no genetic match to known Elvis Presley DNA samples but rather correspond to an unidentified individual who died in Memphis around the time of Elvis's supposed death. As questions mount about the authenticity of what lies beneath the meditation garden, the Presley estate has become increasingly protective of access to the burial site. Recent renovation work in the garden was conducted under unprecedented secrecy, with workers required to sign extensive confidentiality agreements. Whether Elvis Presley died in 1977 or continued living in secrecy may never be definitively proven. The people with direct knowledge are either dead or bound by legal agreements that ensure their silence. But the evidence suggests that the greatest performance in music history wasn't on any stage, but rather the elaborate illusion that convinced the world the king was truly dead. What remains certain is that Elvis Presley's influence transcends death itself, whether that death occurred in 1977 or remains somewhere in the future. His tomb at Graceland continues to draw millions of visitors, each believing they're in the presence of greatness. Perhaps they are, just not in the way they imagined.